It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and with us is the executive director here at Redeemer Radio, Cindy Black. Thanks for being here, Cindy. Theology of the Body, Thursday.
Yes.
Also a feast day of St. Teresa of Calcutta.
Yes.
Maybe more popularly known as Mother Teresa.
Yes.
Who was friends with St. Pope John Paul II.
Yes.
Saint buddies.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
So
being around holy people.
Yeah. So she was around during the time of the formation of Theology of the Body. Do you think that she was reading it or just influenced by it, or that she was just so smart that she was already on that same page?
This is just a guess, but I think the theology of the body and living it is living the gospel. So I think that she probably lived it. She may have read some things along the way, the Wednesday audiences.
Sure.
But I have a feeling that she was already living it.
Yeah.
And I think about even like my grandmother and grandfather, they lived the theology of the body without knowing the teaching.
Right.
That they really trusted God, and they had self-giving love, and that married love was faithful, fruitful, total, and just as God's love, free, faithful, total, fruitful.
Do you see the teachings of Theology of the Body? There's so many different things that we've talked about of how this relates to our life, not just relationships, romantic or otherwise, but the work that she was doing specifically of the dignity of every person and really serving the poorest of the poor, those that were outcasts of society. Was that a form of living out Theology of the Body?
Absolutely, yes. So Mother Teresa, from the stories that I hear and the things that I've read, she had a way of, when people encountered her, first of all, she was very short. By the world standards, she was not beautiful. She would have never been a model or like a celebrity based on her looks. But when people encountered her, they saw an inner beauty, and they also saw their own dignity. She somehow reflected that they also had dignity.
Yeah.
And those encounters, were so profound that that's how her popularity grew, and that's how people began to take notice of this woman who was living in the slums of India and caring for the poor, destitute, sick, dying, marginalized people.
And really seeing the fallout of that, the example that she had and how many people were impacted. I mean, obviously the people that she was serving, but also the people that were serving with her, and just people that heard stories even of her, just had such an impact on people. How do you see this connecting in other ways with Theology of the Body?
Well, the interesting thing is Mother Teresa was really instrumental in my formation.
Oh, okay.
As I started to dive in deeper to our Catholic faith, I started hearing so many of her quotes and things that she said, simple prayers, like let no one come to you and not leave, happier, give them, a smile. We cannot do great things, but we can do small things with great love.
Yeah.
What you can do, I cannot do. What I can do, you cannot do. But together we can do something beautiful for God. So I was hearing all of these quotes, and I was really drawn to her while she was alive. After she died, when I heard about her beatification being announced, I just had this strong desire to be there for her beatification. So I talked to my husband and we prayed about it, and he's like, let's go. I was working for Father Mark Gertner at the time, St. Vincent's, but he was my direct supervisor. So I called him and I asked to take that time frame off in October of 2003. And he said, you can have that time off on one condition, that I get to go with you.
Yeah.
So my husband, Father Mark, and our daughter went to Rome for Mother Teresa's beatification. And it was just a beautiful, lively time, just a lot of joy around the Vatican and St. Peter's. But then we went to, we did this walking tour of her life, her history and her life. And that was the first time that I encountered what we now know as the dark night that Mother Teresa faced. And when I was reading all those quotes about, the dignity of the person and caring for people and doing small things with great love, like Teresa's little way, when I would hear about Mother Teresa's life and the stories and what she did, I had erroneously thought that she must have been receiving daily consolation from God to be able to do the difficult things she was doing. So to hold somebody who with open wounds all over their body that probably smelled of death already and was not yet dead, but when she would hold them in her arms as they were dying, I thought to do that, God had to have been just wrapping his loving arms around her every moment of her prayer so that she could be equipped to go out. And when I started seeing that that was not the case, that actually after she received that call within the call on the train, that she actually really experienced very little consolation in many years of no consolation, just the darkness. She talks about how she still remained faithful to prayer, and others testify that she still remained faithful to prayer without those consolations, that even though she had doubts and God, are you really there? Like this vast emptiness, she still believed and she still chose to love and to affirm the dignity of the human person and see God's face reflected in each person, even though she wasn't really seeing God's face through her prayer and through consolation. So it's amazingly remarkable to me.
Yeah, and hopefully encouraging as well for anyone who finds himself in that situation and thinks, well, I don't feel anything.
Right.
So
Yes, absolutely.
Our faith isn't based on our feelings. Like that's not, we don't put our trust in our feelings. We put our trust in God and truth.
And what he's revealed to us, yes. And also just going back to, the dignity of the human person. Mother Teresa ministered to people without knowing their faith, what they've done, anything that may have led to that situation. She also encountered many children who obviously children don't deserve to be in poverty. But she affirmed the dignity of the person, not because of what they would do or what they were capable of doing. So she didn't have a utilitarian view of the human person.
Right.
She saw their dignity as being made in the image and likeness of God and having every person be worthy of a loving response. And I think sets a great example for all of us in living the theology of the body, that notion of self-gift, not based on what somebody can do for me, but that pouring out of self for the sake of the other, for the sheer reason that they are the most valuable thing that we will experience in the course of our day. An expensive car, a nice home, the best gadget that can do all kinds of things, the latest and greatest. Every human person on the planet is worth infinitely more than any of those things.
Yeah. Another thing that strikes me with Mother Teresa and the Sisters of Charity in general, and a lot of other religious orders as well, is just this trust that I've never really heard of a Sisters of Charity fundraiser. They probably have happened at some point in time, but there's just this trust that we're going to do what God is calling us to, and the needs will be there. So they've got these homes for the dying, and somebody is supporting that. They're not out there selling cookies so that they can, provide another bed for somebody, but they're doing God's work, and God provides.
Yeah, trusting his providence every step of the way. Yes. Which I will say, on a personal note, I have so much room to grow in that, because actually my daughter was discerning with Missionaries of Charity right when she graduated from high school. And we went to New York and visited, and they told me about how little I would have control over seeing her and being around her.
Right.
And I was really struggling with it. I was like, okay, Lord, if you're calling her to religious life, not this order, because I'm not ready. I don't know that I can let go, but that wasn't her vocation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if God was calling her, he would have helped me along the way to let go of my will and seek his will.
Yeah. Another thing that strikes me, especially with her work Mother Teresa's work being so mission-oriented and serving, that I've heard stories of people that went over to serve with her that were maybe not passionate about their faith, maybe they're not Catholic, maybe not Christian, but because of that act of service, that drew them closer to God in some way or another, sometimes very drastic ways. And this idea that living out the teachings of theology of the body can help us grow closer to Christ, and growing closer to Christ can help us live out the teachings of theology of the body. And it doesn't have to be a both. Ideally, yes, we're doing both. We're believing and practicing, but sometimes the practicing can help us in the belief, or vice versa. And so really just kind of seeing that, it's just neat to see how God can work through our actions, even if our heart isn't there at the moment. Like if we are doing it with the right intention, that sometimes that can follow. Right.
And I think, the concept that I try to live by is to just do the next right thing for the right reason. And the right thing is always choosing love. So I fall short so many times, but just to simplify, what is the next call I have to love? And what does that look like? And I think that, St. Teresa of Calcutta really personified that in following God's call and trusting in his providence, and then inspiring others to do the same. The do it anyway handwritten note that she had on her wall, that people are illogical, she basically calls us to the virtue regardless of how others respond or might respond.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful lesson to incorporate in our lives. And then I also think tying that in with the thirst of Jesus from the cross, that when we do for the least, that's who Christ identified with. So any act of love is not wasted, no matter what the person's response is, that act joins us more intimately with Jesus Christ.
And his body. All right. Thank you so much, Cindy. Another great Theology of the Body Thursday. Appreciate it.
Thank you.